There are things out there. Creatures, monsters, ghouls and spirits. Beings that fall outside the realm of visible truth, beyond the confines of our basic reality. They lurk in the dark, haunt the recesses of our minds, and stir our curiosity in the unusual and weird. They are taboo topics, stories that we tell around the campfire and folklore passed down from our ancestors. We've been taught that these things don't exist, that they are merely myth and legend. Or are they? Welcome to the Occult Archives. I'm your host and spooky librarian, E.M. Moon, but feel free to refer to me as E. Here lies a space beyond all spaces, a library full of arcane information enough to drive any normal person mad. If you can think of it, if you can question it, the archives probably have what you seek. Tonight I'm bringing you another episode of Stories from the Archives. Another 667 Children of the Beast episode, picking up where we left off with part 1 of issue number 7, part 1. The highest manifestation of life consists in this, that a being governs its own actions. A thing which is always subject to the direction of another is somewhat of a dead thing. Thomas Aquinas. July 15th, 2016. Subject number 001. Violet Eve. It had only been a few weeks since we left Salem, and I was kind of starting to miss it. I had been emailing back and forth with Naomi since then. She was doing well, but still getting used to her dream walking. She had, however, told me about the possibility that she had prevented a kidnapping while traversing through someone else's dream. How she explained that to the police, I didn't ask. Josiah had been kinder than usual, but he still kept us under lock and key. We were stuck in the house while Henri had resumed helping the NOPD with the investigation involving the Crescent City shaman. They were insistent that they were getting closer to finding the perpetrator, but they weren't. They'd never find Jeremy. Nate's death was oddly still a question that was up in the air. No one would tell me how they were able to explain that situation to anyone, and why I hadn't even heard anything about a funeral. I found it all quite funny, and it fueled my curiosity. I tried not to ask too many questions, and instead do some investigating of my own. Research had been a high priority as of late. I had just sat down to respond to an email from Naomi when the little white envelope popped up on the right side of my desktop. Never being one to stay on track, I clicked on it, and the email opened up to an address that I didn't recognize. Violet, not sure if you remember me or not, but we met in Salem. I got your email address from Naomi Starr that works up at Brigitte's Dawn in downtown. She thinks that maybe you can help me. I moved away from the city about a week ago, but I had talked to Naomi before I left. I'm not even really sure how to begin explaining myself. We had a rash of unexplained deaths right before you all arrived here. They only got weirder after you left, but I wasn't able to put it all together till about 2 weeks ago. Each and every person who died inexplicably had been one of my tattoo clients. I went back and found their names in my customer database and noticed something odd. Their deaths all had eerie similarities to the tattoos that I had given them. There was a man that was bitten by a very venomous snake that was found to not be native to the area, a cobra, just like the tattoo on his forearm. Another woman who had gotten a tattoo that looked like a bite had been taken out of her stomach was found eviscerated. It went on like that through quite a few clients. I have been tattooing for the past 5 years, but have been out of work for a while. My friend Sam opened up the shop in Salem and invited me to come work there right after my birthday last month. I hadn't done too many tattoos there by the time we met, and now I am afraid to do any more until I can figure out what is going on. What I am getting at is, I think that my tattoos are killing these people. I have no idea how that is even possible, but I was desperate enough to go to Brigitte's Dawn looking for answers. So far, every single person that has gotten inked by me since I started work at the shop is dead, and I have to figure out why and how to stop it. She pointed me in your direction. I need your help, Violet. Whatever you know, whatever information you can give me, it's important that I get it. I stopped working at the shop right after I found out about all of this and haven't done a tattoo since. But the last tattoo I did was on your boyfriend, Adam. Please email me back ASAP. 7. What in the hell did I just read? I remembered 7. I remembered sneaking into the basement of the old El Cipher clinic that was now the tattoo shop, too. From the sound of that email and the fact that Naomi had sent him my way, I could only assume he was one of us. I wanted to reply right away to his email, but I knew I had to talk to Adam first. He had gotten a tattoo in his chest from Seven, a tattoo that looked almost identical to the one I had fabricated to hide my third eye. I was thankful that he was concerned, but Adam wasn't like most people, and neither was Seven, apparently. I snagged my phone from the end table in the sunroom and started texting Adam. "We need to talk. Really important. Call me." He had gone out with Kane into the swamp to play with their new powers like they had been doing for days now. It was something allowable by Josiah that didn't keep them cooped up inside all day. "Are you okay? Kind of have my hands full at the moment." Of course he did. He had been avoidant like that for a few weeks now. He hadn't really talked to me in days, but that was probably my own fault. "I'm okay, but you might not be. Just fucking call me." That was rude. I was rude, but it's hard to express urgency through a text message sometimes. My phone rang immediately and I picked it up. "I know you're out with Kane having man time, but this is really important. Do you remember Seven from Salem?" "The tattoo artist?" Adam sounded almost breathless as he spoke. "Yes, I just got an email from him and it doesn't sound good. I think he may be one of us." I was already preparing to forward the email to him. "And what would make you think that?" I could hear splashing on his end as they tromped through the waters of the marsh. "Check your email. I just forwarded it to you. Let Kane read it too. I'm going to go talk to Salome and wait for you two to get back." I clicked send and set my laptop down. "Whatever you say, boss. We'll be back shortly." Adam was short himself as he hung up the phone. I tried not to take his abruptness negatively as I set off to find Salome in the big antebellum mansion. "He sounds like he's one of us, but what the hell? Tattoos that come to life?" Salome had been reading the email on my mobile. "Yeah, that's definitely a new one." I was only half listening. I was thinking more about Adam and that eye on his chest. "He tattooed Adam?" Salome cocked a perfectly arched brow at me. "We didn't tell anyone. When we were trying to find out more about the Bati Pot, Adam and I took a detour to the clinic that used to be in Salem. It's now a tattoo shop. Adam decided that getting a tattoo was a good distraction while I tried to gather evidence." I sighed a little too audibly as I stared out at the front drive and the Spanish moss swaying slightly in the hot wind of a Louisiana summer. "Did you find anything?" Salome's curiosity was now piqued. "We can talk about that later. Here they come." Kane and Adam had rounded the house and were now climbing the front stairs, soaking wet from the knees down. "So he thinks that my tattoo is just going to come to life and blink me to death?" Adam plopped down in a rocking chair next to me. "I don't know that his powers would even affect you like that, since he may be one of us. If it hasn't done anything yet, it probably won't." I was finally typing up my email to Naomi, letting her know that I had heard from Seven. "Well, that's good to know. I can now sleep better at night." Adam leaned back in his rocker and made a funny face at me. Or maybe it was at what was behind me. Kane and Salome were cuddled up together on the porch swing, their faces hidden by a curtain of hair as I assumed they were expressing their fondness for one another. "You don't think it's cute?" I smirked, watching as Adam averted his eyes. "I mean, it's cute, I guess. Good for them." Adam shrugged and crossed his arms. He seemed uncomfortable with their public displays of affection, but there was something underlying all of it. He almost seemed jealous? Bitter? "Can you get out of my head, please?" Adam waved a hand around his face as he spoke. "How are we going to help Seven?" He didn't look like he was ready to jet back to the Northeast anytime soon. "I'm not sure. We should probably talk to Josiah first and see what he thinks. He wouldn't be happy if we made important decisions without him." I made a piffed sound. Salome's giggle caught Adam's attention, and he rocketed from the chair and stepped to the door as he replied, "Tell me what the plan is after you talk to him." And he slipped into the house with a slam. The noise startled the lovebirds, and Kane finally spoke.
"What was that all about?"
"Don't know," I shrugged, "but I need to talk to Josiah about all of this." I figured it would take my mind off of Adam's weird behavior and turn that curiosity towards the situation with Seven.
Subject name, Adam Bodine. Violet saw right through me. She always did. That damn third eye was so nosy. It wasn't that seeing Salome and Kane crawl all over each other upset me, but it upset me. I had been single for months now, but there was still that ache in my gut when I saw other people happily wrapped up in one another. My ex-girlfriend had decided it was time to stop pretending that she was interested in me and go find herself. She had been a fun-loving goth chick who proclaimed to be an unselfish Satanist, a woman who loved to come to my shows and help me with art classes and sporting events down at the community center. Really, she had just done all of those things because she liked the status that came with being my girlfriend. She liked the attention when she danced for my gigs and talking to the press whenever I did something positive with the kids in the community. She liked to be in the limelight. When she found out the local news station was looking for a weather girl, she traded in her neon-colored wigs and black clothes for coiffed blonde hair and a pantsuit. The station liked the look of her so much, and ratings went up when she did the weather, so the station promoted her to news anchor. We split because of it. She and I didn't want the same things and were clearly going in two different directions. I woke up one morning to a vacant bed and empty closets with a note telling me that she had to move on with her life and answer her calling, whatever the hell that meant. I slipped one of my favorite vinyls onto the record player and laced my arms behind me as I plopped down on the bed. I hadn't meant to be so rude with Violet, but it was something I didn't want to talk about. I wasn't ready to get close to anyone again, and she just kept drawing me in. There was no time for me to get wrapped up in someone else right now. There was just too much going on. Henri may have kept joking with me about finding at least someone to know on a carnal level, but I wasn't even able to leave the house, let alone go trolling for women.
"Adam?"
A knock sounded at the door, as someone waited patiently on the other side. "Come in, Cassandra." I reached out to turn the music down as she opened the door and entered. I could see why Henri had been so enamored with her. She was tall and thin with the most beautiful skin and naturally wavy hair that glinted with hints of gold. Cassandra's face was borderline perfect in its symmetry, and her intense hazel eyes were always sultry, no matter her disposition. "What's up?" I leaned back in the bed and waited for her to talk.
"Josiah wants you to come down and discuss this Seven thing with him, but I'm wondering why you lied to me in Salem."
Cassandra perched her dress-clad form on the end of my amp and waited for a response. "Because I knew you wouldn't let us go otherwise?" I shot back. I hadn't thought about Violet telling everyone about our little detour to the tattoo shop, but of course it would have to come out sooner or later.
"I would have had I known Violet had the information. Josiah is expecting full disclosure on your little journey when you come downstairs, as Violet wouldn't make a peep. She can be rather brazen."
Cassandra pursed her red lips. "Violet doesn't answer to anybody if you haven't noticed." There I went, coming off rude again. "What I mean is she doesn't feel like she owes anyone anything. As much as she wants to help others like us, she wants to find out who we really are because she knows how beneficial that could be to our kind. We are sort of fighting blindly right now."
"That woman from the square seemed to know who you were. Violet, at the very least."
Cassandra made eye contact with me for a second. Did she think that I knew who that woman under the street lamp was? She may have known us, but we don't know her. I tried not to come off sounding defensive.
"Either way, that is another outlet we need to pursue after this. Let's get downstairs and talk to Josiah so we can continue to move forward."
Cassandra got up from the amp and traipsed out the door. Adam, have a seat. We were just discussing this man named Seven that you and Violet met when you took your little day trip to get tattooed." Josiah looked irate, but I wasn't worried about it. I chose the seat next to Cassandra and caught Violet mouthing her apologies, but I crossed my arms and turned my attention to Josiah. "What do you want me to say? I went with Violet to check out the old El Cypher clinic in Salem. Everyone had the Bot situation under control for the time being, and we needed to know more about who created us. I glanced at Violet, who was smiling slightly at me from across the table. Well, what did you find? Josiah didn't like when I stood up for myself, or when anyone stood up for themselves, but he wanted to know what Violet and I already knew.
File copies of the other 661 of us?
Violet was smug as she responded. 661? You mean to tell me that there are 666 of you? Josiah was dumbstruck, as were the rest of the people in the room who weren't privy.
Well, 667 if you count 7.
She corrected him. 667. There are 667 of you with uncontrollable powers just roaming around out there? Leo just shook his head. Not all of us are uncontrolled. I think the company here is doing a fine job, and Naomi seems to have it together. Kane piped up as he looked my way. That may be, but that means there are 662 of you who might not be controlled, Josiah quipped.
661.
Violet muttered under her breath. Everyone tended to forget that Missy was no longer alive. Let's have those files then. Josiah tapped the table. You can have them, but you won't be able to read any of them without a vintage PC. I chuckled. Violet had some of the information already, but Josiah was going to have to work for the rest. He looked from me to Violet, not quite understanding what I was saying. There had been nothing on the table in front of her up until now, but her hands were now clasped atop a sizable black box. You weren't kidding. Leo eyed the box of discs on the table. How are we supposed to access anything on those? Find us a Macintosh? I kicked up on the table and could have sworn I saw smoke pluming from Josiah's ears. Can't Violet access them somehow with her powers? Leo suggested, but Violet just rolled her eyes.
Doesn't work that way. Adam is right. We need an old computer to read these.
Violet responded, but I knew she had already read at least one of them. Then let's see if we can find a working one somewhere. In the meantime, get back in contact with this 7 character and see what we can do to help. If his tattoos are coming to life like he claims, we're going to have to put a stop to that. Josiah jotted something down in a notebook before closing it.
I don't think he's a threat. I just think that he doesn't know what is going on and thus can't control his powers.
Violet wanted to make sure that Josiah wasn't going to start looking at 7 like he was one of the bad guys. Regardless, we need to get this under control before anyone else dies. Josiah quickly corrected himself before he royally pissed off Violet.
I'll email him back and figure out a way to get him to New Orleans. I really don't feel like going back up there anytime soon.
Violet began to slide the box towards her when Josiah snapped for her to pass it to him instead. I'll take that and keep it safe if you don't mind. He nodded in her direction. Violet eyed him guardedly for a moment before sliding the box across the table.
Seriously, keep it locked up, okay? I don't know where I even pulled those from, so there is a possibility that someone could be looking for them.
None of us had thought about that until now. It was highly unlikely that the entirety of the files was just sitting down in the basement of the tattoo shop. I promise it will be kept under tight security until we can get all our hands on a virtually extinct dinosaur of a computer. Josiah nodded at her again and took the box under his arm. Violet scooted her seat back, phone in hand, and exited the room with Salome and Kane not far behind. I sat glued to my seat, however, waiting for Josiah to say something else. I could tell by the look on his face that he had questions about Violet. He always had questions about Violet. What does she already know? He turned to me, popping the lid on the floppy disk box to see what was inside. All I know is that she read her own file. You're going to have to talk to her about what she read. She didn't really tell me anything. That wasn't entirely true. She had mentioned the inhibitor serum, and that her mother had been patient 0, but it really wasn't anything new. If there had been something else, she hadn't told me. I'll discuss things with her later. Right now I want you to make sure that she gets in contact with 7, and we can get all of that settled. I am hoping that he will be on our side, but we have to be prepared that maybe he won't be. Josiah got up from his seat and set the box inside a cabinet as I went to stand up and leave. Wait a second, Adam. He held his finger up as I had almost made it to the door. You got a tattoo from this guy? I did. I knew that Josiah was going to chastise me for that. Can I see it? Josiah's gold tooth was glinting as he curiously smiled at me. I shrugged and pulled the collar of my t-shirt down to expose the eye that was now speckled with chest hair after it had several weeks to heal. Josiah chuckled. Don't let yourself get sucked in so easily, Adam. I know about how your last relationship went, and I don't think you need to get involved with this girl. I like her, but she seems a bit volatile. She seems to be more invested in L-Cipher Laboratories than she is in finding the rest of your kind and stopping them before they turn like her friend Missy. Josiah warned me. Yeah, well, this is sort of personal to her, you know? I won't go around telling people about her private life, but you can ask her if you want. I'm not interested in her like that, Josiah. It was just a split-second decision, and this was the first thing that came to mind. I let go of the collar of my shirt and placed my hand back on the doorknob. Whatever you say, Adam, but you're a Bodine, and I know how you boys can be. He winked, and I left before I had a chance to say or do something that I would have regretted. Subject name 7. I was anxiously waiting for Violet to respond to me, if she had even gotten my email. Naomi had been nice enough to give me her information after we talked at Brigade's Dawn. She seemed a little bit taken aback when I asked her questions about curses and hexes, wondering if maybe one had been put on me, and that is why all of my clients had been dying. She asked me to elaborate, and when I mentioned my birthday, she got a bit nosy, asking the exact date and year. I assumed it had something to do with astrological signs or something, but she didn't let on. She just immediately scribbled down Violet's name and email on a piece of paper and told me to contact her, said that she and her friend Adam could help me, even though they lived in New Orleans. It was then that it clicked. I had met them in Salem only a few weeks before and had tattooed Adam. He was the last person I had put a machine to and possibly the only one that was still alive. What were the odds that I would run into a friend of theirs who thought that they could possibly help me in this? I didn't know what good it would do since my story sounded so far-fetched, but Naomi seemed to believe it at least. I had bit my nails almost to the quick in anticipation for her response when my phone went off with an email alert. I fumbled with the lock screen before clicking on the email. It was Violet.
7. I think we can help you, but it would be easier if we could talk on the phone. This isn't really something I want to go back and forth with through email. I'm glad Naomi pointed you in our direction, though. Give me a call when you can at 555-616-0001. Violet.
A sudden rush of relief washed over me as I read her words. I grabbed a pencil off my art desk and began scribbling the margins of a drawing I had been working on and closed out of the email before dialing her number. It rang twice before someone picked up.
Hello?
I recognized Violet's accent instantly, but my voice came out shaky in response. Is this Violet?
Yes, it is. Is this 7?
She knew it was me. Yeah. I didn't even know how to begin the conversation.
I can tell you're scared. Don't be. I'm going to try and find a way to help you out.
Violet's voice sounded oddly cool. I'm a bit worse for wear at the moment. I just don't know what is happening right now. I was finally able to let some of my worry out with just a few sentences.
We'll figure it out. You said that you moved and haven't tattooed anyone since, Adam?
She queried calmly. How could she be keeping it together after I told her that her boyfriend could possibly die at any minute? Yeah, I actually moved to Baton Rouge. I nodded to myself as I spoke.
You're down south now?
There was a hint of excitement in her voice. Yeah, Sam has friends down this way and helped me move. I was surprised considering I just sort of left him high and dry in Salem. I scooted down in my chair and tried to relax while I talked to her.
Were you the only tattoo artist at the shop?
Violet asked another question. I imagined her taking notes in a little notebook like some cop. Besides Sam. We had to shut it down because I didn't want a tattoo anymore and Sam couldn't handle it by himself. His business partner just disappeared on us. It wasn't the only tattoo shop he owns, though. He has several down here, so he offered to take me to Baton Rouge with him. I just started to talk, despite my initial concern.
And what excuse did you come up with for not wanting to work at the shop anymore?
Violet sounded a little curious. I told him the truth. I winced. I figured Violet was going to give me a stern talking to for not sugarcoating this ordeal for everyone.
And he believed you?
She sounded uncertain as she asked. Well, she fucking believed me. He did. I think moved me to Baton Rouge so I could start over. I'm out of work and getting dangerously close to being out of money because I have no idea what to do with myself. I confessed to her. I just needed her to help me.
Maybe we should meet up. There's too much to talk about over the phone. Since you don't really seem to have the funds to drive to us, we can come to you.
Violet still hadn't given me any real explanation as to what was going on, but at least she was going to come talk to me face to face. I'll text you the address and you just tell me when, I responded.
Let me talk to everyone else and I will shoot you a text when we are headed your way. And 7, just sit tight, okay? We'll find a way to help you.
And then she hung up. Great. More waiting. But it didn't take long for her to get back to me. In under an hour, she had texted back and said they were heading out around 4. I knew that in just a couple of hours, I would hopefully be able to answer all these questions that had been zipping through my mind for the past few weeks.
Subject number 001. Violet Eve.
He told his boss? This isn't the sort of thing that you just go telling people.
Adam was in the driver's seat going way too fast for my liking down the highway. He's scared. Can't fault him for that. I shook my head as I gripped the seat next to him.
Do you really look like a guy that gets easily scared, though?
Adam was very combative with me. Looks can't tell you everything about a person, Adam. I grabbed onto the handle above the window and held on for dear life as Adam turned off the exit.
Do you have to keep driving like that, dude? I'm practically sitting in Salome's lap, and I know that can't be comfortable.
I turned over my shoulder to see Kane holding onto the headrest of the driver's seat. Yes, what he said. Can you slow it down a bit? I placed my hand upon Adam's over the gear shift, and he reflexively jerked it away. He was going to wreck the car if he didn't calm himself down.
Yeah, sorry.
He slowly moved his hand back and shifted as he turned right off the exit. What kind of power could this possibly be? It sounds like an episode of The Twilight Zone or something. Salome had settled back in her seat and was eyeing me through the side mirror. I'm not sure, but everyone that he's inked since he had his birthday has died. I hadn't even thought to ask him how old he was, but the whole situation just screamed that he was one of the 667.
Everyone except me.
Adam spoke, but his eyes never left the road. I think you're fine. I mean, if he is one of us, then there is a high possibility that his powers won't affect you like it does a regular person. That was my theory, anyway.
Adam pointed down a street. Turn here?
I nodded. I think so. I was watching the little yellow arrow that was gliding over the map when the image changed to a phone number. Hello? I answered the call. You want to meet where? A few blocks over from the house? We can do that. No, it's no problem. See you in a bit. He wants to meet us at the park a few blocks from the house. He sounded off. I had hung up the phone and pointed down the street that Adam needed to take.
To the park, then.
He turned and took us the few blocks down a side street that led to the prettiest little park with more Spanish moss on the trees than the ones at Cassandra's house. That looks like him. I pointed out the window as Adam parked the car. I could see 7 perched on a park bench, wringing his hands together. I was the first to hop out of the car and ran over to him. My third eye was twitching something awful. 7? I posed his name as a question because he looked slightly different since the last time I had seen him. I could see that his hair was longer, shorn on one side, and his eyes were red and puffy, almost as if he had been crying. Violet? He tried to force a smile, but I could tell that it was a front. What happened? I had to ask. Adam, Salome, and Kane came up then, and Seven tried to introduce himself, but he choked.
Another one. I think I killed another one.
He hung his head low in his lap and just shook it from side to side. But you said you hadn't tattooed anyone else. I was not expecting that to be the problem.
When I got off the phone with you, I decided to leave the house and grab something to eat before you all got here. And when I came back, there were police cars everywhere. I tried to go inside, but they refused to let me in. And when I asked them what had happened, they told me that my roommate had been killed.
Seven was trying so hard not to lose his mind. Sam? I questioned. He hadn't mentioned who he had moved in with.
No, just a friend of his, but regardless, the cops told me that they found him in his room, burnt to a crisp.
Seven stood abruptly from the bench and walked over to a tree, where he began to anxiously pick the leaves from a limb.
But what does it have to do with you? You didn't fry him up like a crispy critter.
Poor choice of words on Adam's part, because Seven was on him like he had just insulted his mother.
It was my fucking fault. I had been doing some drawings here and there, and I had sketched out this colossal dragon a few days ago. Rick really liked it and offered to pay me for it, so I let him have it.
Seven butted up against Adam as they were toe-to-toe. I could see the flash of fire in Adam's fist, and knew that if I didn't break the two of them up, Seven might meet the same fate as his roommate. Was that dragon breathing fire in the drawing by chance? I came between the two of them and gently pushed Seven back to the tree.
Yes.
He relaxed under my touch, but continued to focus his eyes on Adam. So, it isn't the tattoos then. It's your art. That was the link. His drawings were coming to life.
But how? How in the hell is this even happening? I've been drawing for years, and not once has anything that I have drawn ever harmed anyone.
Seven looked me dead in the eyes as he spoke. He was so confused, so scared, and he had no answers. You may want to sit for this, yeah? I took him by the hand and brought him back over to the bench. When is your birthday, if you don't mind me asking? I sat down next to him and waited for him to talk.
Why are you and your friends so interested in my birthday?
Seven's hazel eyes were almost watery as he looked at me. It is rather important. I just needed to hear the date.
June 6th, 1986.
He replied, waiting for me to say something profound. Mine too. I spoke back as he curiously looked at me. Same as Adam and Salome and Kane. We all have the same birthday, June 6th, 1986.
All 5 of us have the same birthday?
Seven looked dumbfounded. Naomi too. We were all born on the same day, and we all have special talents like you do. I tried to break the news to him as simply as possible.
Do your talents kill people too?
Seven sarcastically responded as if I couldn't somehow relate to him. They have, sort of. I don't even know how to go about explaining all of this to you, but we aren't normal people. I still don't know exactly what we are, but we all have the ability to do some extraordinary things. I laid my hand on his arm and I felt him relax under my touch.
What can you do then?
He turned to me as he placed his own hand over mine. I blinked and Seven and I were back under the tree that he had been tearing the leaves from, while the other 3 still stood by the bench. My powers had become more commonplace for them, and they didn't even bat an eye.
How in the...
Seven almost knocked me back when he stood up from the base of the tree. It's this little thing I do. I blinked again, and the 2 of us were seated back on the bench.
That hardly seems like a dangerous power.
Seven seemed like his interest had been piqued by my little display. It can be if I want it to be. I wasn't going to show him just how dangerous, but I think he got the point.
And you 3 can do stuff like this too?
Seven pointed at me as he addressed everyone else. We can, but I don't think here is a very appropriate place to be demonstrating that sort of thing. Salome responded as she took hold of Kane's hand. Then let's go somewhere where you can. She is one thing, but I am not yet convinced. Seven insisted. What about me teleporting him back and forth wasn't convincing? Where would you like to go then? I wanted him to at least be comfortable, and if it took us going someplace where prying eyes wouldn't see us, then so be it. We can go to Sam's. He has a farm about 10 miles outside of Baton Rouge. I can't go back to my house anyway, and it's private out there. Seven smiled at me, and I couldn't help but smile back. I wouldn't deny that he was rather attractive, but now wasn't the time. Lead the way. We'll drive. I went to stand, but Seven beat me to it and helped me from the bench. I'll drive. Adam scoffed as the five of us got back in the crossover and headed to Sam's farm. This place is beautiful. Reminds me of the ranch back home, except greener. Salome gushed as we pulled down the long dirt drive lined with old magnolias and stopped in front of a big red barn. Sam isn't here. Still getting everything squared away in Salem, but he told me I could use the farmhouse whenever I needed it. Seven climbed out of the car and stood in the middle of the broad drive. It is rather lovely out here. I took a deep breath and could smell the wet hay and horses somewhere out in the pasture. It is nice. Now, show me what the rest of you can do. Seven seemed a little excited as he waited for the rest of us to show off our powers. I'll go first then. Kane stepped forward and let out a low whistle. I watched as Seven waited for something to happen. Somewhere on the other side of the barn, a hound barked, and then another, and another. 3 massive black dogs rounded the structure and came bounding up to their master. Seven almost backed into me when the dogs galloped up to Kane and sat obediently by his side. I can summon the hounds of hell. Kane grinned, and I knew that Seven could now see just how sharp his teeth were. Salome went next, and everyone watched as she climbed the fence into the pasture and grabbed a handful of wildflowers before walking up to Seven with her arms outstretched. The flowers began to wither in her grasp until they were nothing but a putrid green mess in her hands. Decay. Not a pretty power, but it works for me. She pursed her lips as she shook the goop from her fingers. And what about you? Seven crossed his arms as he looked at Adam. It was almost as if he was challenging him. Adam didn't look happy that he had to perform for an audience, but he trudged over to a fire pit that was amidst a circle of chairs and took off the new gloves that Henri had fashioned for him. He placed his hand to the dry brush that was piled inside, and it instantly went up in flames. You can roast weenies with hands like that. Seven began to laugh, but Adam didn't look like he found it very funny. There you have it. I'm going to try and explain this to you as simply as I can. All of us were created in a lab with the same birthdays and all with incredible gifts that no normal human could possess. We don't know why we were created or what we are, but we do know who made us. A medical facility called L-Cipher Laboratories. It was getting tiring having to explain this over and over again. I was starting to consider making a damn pamphlet and just handing it out whenever we met another one like us. Well, what the hell do you think we are? Seven turned to me for an answer. Demons, super soldiers, God's chosen freaks. I don't really have an answer to that. We're in the process of trying to figure everything out. I explained as I watched the sun start to sink lower in the sky. Anyone else want a beer? I'm pretty sure I need a drink after all of this. Seven blinked hard a few times before fumbling for his keys. Sounds good to me. It was the least irritated Adam had sounded all day. Sam always has the fridge stocked. We can hang out here for a while and maybe discuss this a little more? Seven was now talking to me again. Sure, we don't really have anything else to do. I agreed, and the lot of us entered the farmhouse for a cold brew and a long conversation. Subject name, Adam Bodine. What do you think about this guy? Kane asked me as we sat on an old sofa with a few domestics in hand.
He seemed nice enough when we met him in Salem, but we didn't exactly get to best buds status. I'd been asking him about the shop, and Violet was in the basement looking for clues. I knocked my beer back and took a long swig.
Violet seems to like him well enough.
Salome chimed in as she scooted closer to Kane. She wasn't wrong. We had been sitting here for an hour while Violet told Seven pretty much everything we knew. She explained to him that the shop he had been working at was once one of the clinics that had a hand in helping create us, that Naomi was one of us too, and what her special abilities were, even that we had encountered angels and demons since all of this began. Seven seemed to be taking it all rather well by the way he kept touching her arm as they talked, and she seemed to be enjoying his company with the way she laughed at everything he said. Violet sees the good in everyone. I glanced over at the two as they sat at the kitchen table together. That's a good thing, though. She gives people a chance even if they don't think they deserve it. Kane retorted. I knew he was talking about himself. That she does, I replied. He was right. She trusted me, a total stranger, even after she had just been accosted by a man on her first night in New Orleans. Granted, if she hadn't trusted me. Anyone hungry? I can order us some pizzas. Seven called out from the table, and I watched as Violet's gaze never left him. Pizza. That would hit the spot right about now. Kane stretched on the sofa and pulled Salome close to him as he kissed her forehead. Everyone was getting a little too comfortable with one another for my liking, and I decided to excuse myself. Pizza's good. I'm just gonna go for a walk and a smoke. Holler out to me when it gets here. I set my beer down on the coffee table and walked out the front door. The sun was going down now, and I assumed that we were going to be staying the night at the farmhouse. No one seemed to mind since we weren't stuck inside the mansion twiddling our thumbs for hours on end. I wouldn't have minded it so much had everyone around me not been all lovey-dovey with one another. I tried to forget about all the mushy stuff, and yet it seemed to be slapping me in the face. Adam! Pizza's here! Seven was jogging up to me from the farmhouse as I balanced myself on the post of the pasture fence. I'll be there in a minute. I was working on my fourth cigarette and wasn't sure if I was ready to eat yet. I think your girlfriend wants you to come in and eat something. He pushed as I hopped down from my perch and smudged my smoke out in the dirt. Violet isn't my girlfriend. That was just a story that we told you so we could go snooping around in your basement. I had to be truthful. She never mentioned that while we were talking. Does that mean she's single? A slight smile crept across his face as I followed him back to the house. I guess it does. Still had to be truthful. If this wasn't such a fucked up situation, I'd ask her to dinner or something. You two made a pretty convincing couple, though. Seven nudged me. He was trying to be friendly, but for some reason I just wasn't interested in being friendly back. I guess we did. I hadn't thought about how we looked together. We were just playing a part to gain intel. Well, I still may ask her to dinner. It isn't like we live that far from one another now. Seven smiled, and for one reason or another, that big pearly grin made me want to punch him in the face. Go for it. Not sure if she will say yes, but it's worth a shot. Now I was just being an asshole, but I didn't care. But I think she might say yes. She seems like she could be interested. But Seven just kept going. Thank God we had just gotten to the front door, or I probably would have slugged him, for whatever reason. Eat some pizza, dude. This is seriously some of the best I have ever had. Kane had one of the biggest slices in his hand, and Salome was sitting with Violet munching away on one equally as big. I snagged a slice and started eating as Seven took his seat next to Violet and began chatting away with her again. I spoke quietly to Kane as he sat on the couch and listened to Seven make jokes with the girls. What exactly are we doing right now? We can't save people that are already dead, and he said he isn't tattooing anymore. I suspect after this he won't draw again either. We need to make him understand that his powers aren't inherently bad. Maybe there is a way that he can control what his art does and use it to his advantage, our advantage. We need more allies like Naomi and less possible enemies like Missy. Kane stuffed his crust in his mouth and went for another slice. True, But there's something about Seven I just don't like. I grunted, finishing my own slice. What? The fact that Violet likes him? Kane paused mid-bite and arched a fuzzy eyebrow at me. What? I mimicked him involuntarily. Why would her liking him make me dislike him? That seemed petty, but maybe it was true. I have no idea. Kane just shook his head and arched both brows this time.
So this is what I think we should do.
I overheard Violet speaking and positioned myself on the sofa to listen in.
You need to draw something and learn how to control it. Maybe start with something small and non-threatening and then work your way up. I mean, you could learn to draw your own weapons and whatnot.
Do I need weapons? Seven asked.
If you're going to fight the good fight in all of this, you might. Aside from our apparent powers, we all are superhumanly strong, abnormally healthy, and incredibly agile. I think those traits come with the territory.
Violet pointed out what the majority of us already knew. You all fight a lot? What do you fight? Seven was only posing these questions to Violet and not anyone else in the room, but I decided to answer for her. Quite a bit. Anything from angels to criminals to demons, even each other. I hadn't meant for that last bit to have such a bite, but it caused Violet to noticeably flinch. I knew she was thinking about Missy.
Some of us aren't good people. We may have seemed that way before our transformation, but things changed after.
Violet was pensive as she stared down at her half-eaten slice. Transformation. Is that what that was? Seven was now thinking pretty hard.
It was painful, wasn't it? The fog is no joke.
Salome laid a caring hand on Seven's shoulder. I was actually down at Proctor's Ledge when my birthday came. I'd gone with Sam and his business partner after we had one too many. I'm not even sure where the hell they had wandered off to, but I was down near the hanging trees, wasted as fuck, when this thick fog just rolled in and it hit me. I thought I was having a heart attack or a seizure, or both. I cried out for help, but I guess they didn't hear me right away. When they found me, I was lying flat on my back, just looking up at the sky. They assumed that I was just blitzed, and I didn't bother going into detail with them because at least I was fucking alive. Seven seemed a little emotional as he retold his story, but he had the comforting hand of both women now.
It was literally a life-changing experience for all of us. That is why I'm trying to figure out who we are and where the rest of us are hiding, because we will be stronger if we are in this together. I don't know why we were made, but there are people, beings out there that don't want us to survive, that don't want us to do good or think for ourselves. We have a choice in all of this to do the right thing or to let evil take over. And I want all of us to fight for ourselves and the people around us who can't fight.
That was quite possibly one of the most profound things I had ever heard come out of Violet's mouth. She did care about everyone, no matter what Josiah said. She was dealing with her own internal struggles while still trying to fight for everyone else around her. She was far stronger than he gave her credit for. I like you, Violet. You have one of the most beautiful souls I've ever seen, and I think that most of us will want to follow your example. Anyone who doesn't wasn't truly a good soul to begin with. Maybe we've been given the opportunity to make a change in this world with these powers. Seven seemed like he had changed his tune, and by the look on Violet's face, I could tell that she was eating up every word he fed to her. I just hoped that he wasn't feeding her a line. Subject name, 7. Okay, what do you want me to draw? I sat back in the kitchen chair with a pad of paper on the table and a pencil in hand.
Something a little less dangerous than what you have been.
Violet was twirling an ink pen between her fingers. It was late, and she had been working me up to draw something, and I had just given in. I knew she wanted to see what I could do, but I wasn't feeling it. I couldn't always draw on demand. The others had retired to old television shows, but Violet wasn't giving up on me. Let's see. How about a kitten? I smirked at her, and she rolled her green eyes ever so slightly at me.
Fine, but I want it to be a tabby.
She tapped the paper, insisting I put my pencil to it. I began sketching quickly and tried to make the feline take up the whole page. Would a kitten be just as deadly as a fire-breathing dragon if I was the one that was drawing it? And there you have it, a tabby cat. I turned the paper around so she could see it better, but didn't hand it to her.
It's cute, but it isn't doing anything.
Violet slid the paper back to me. Because I don't know how it does anything. I just ink the drawing and it leaves my person and then goes on to commit terrible acts of violence. I sucked my lips in as I studied the creature on the page.
Then maybe you should give it to me.
She held her hand out and waited for me to put the paper in her palm. Are you sure you want me to do that? I was hesitant about even letting her hold the drawing.
What is the worst that can happen? You didn't draw a tiger or something, just a wee baby kitten.
Violet chuckled, but I didn't find it that funny. I tattooed a tiger on the guy that was in the shop the day I met you and Adam. I licked my lips as I thought about the headlines from that death. Man seemingly torn apart by jungle cat. Investigation continues with possible animal trafficking ring. Yeah, more like good ink work turning into a deadly encounter.
Oh, I forgot about the tiger. I'm so sorry. That was a very poor choice of words on my part.
Violet appeared to be truly apologetic. No worries. Here. I finally let her take the paper from my hand, and she looked it over carefully.
Nothing. Still just a kitten on a piece of paper, but a rather well-drawn one at that.
Violet looked at it a little longer before she folded it up and placed it in the pocket of her shorts.
Can I use your toilet?
It wasn't the first time she had asked me that, but far less cute. She did a little dance for me last time and everything. Down the hall and to the left. I pointed to the back of the farmhouse, and she nodded before walking away. Not a bad view.
Anything scary happening over there?
I heard Adam holler from the open doorway. He had stepped out to smoke another cigarette and looked like he still was.
Nope, just drawing fluffy kittens.
I got up from my seat and went to get a slice of cold pizza from the kitchen counter.
Sounds exhilarating.
He practically scoffed at me. What was his problem? He'd been weird since they got here, nothing like the guy I had met in Salem. He seemed positively irked. I opened my mouth to reply with a snarky remark when we heard a string of expletives streaming from down the hall.
Jesus Christ, what the... Oh, God.
And then lilting laughter as Violet came bustling down the hall and Adam was to her before I could even try. Trailing behind her was a tabby kitten, meowing and talking up a storm as it chased Violet down the hall.
It worked.
She was laughing as Adam gripped her by the elbows and moved her out of the way to scoop up the cat. Maybe I have to be out of the line of sight for it to work? I joked as Adam handed the tabby to me, and I stroked it between the ears.
Or maybe you were thinking about it while I was in the toilet and it just manifested itself?
Violet pinched the kitten at the scruff and cradled it in her arms. That's a good possibility. I didn't know what else to say.
The thing is, how long does it last? In the police reports, was there ever a mention of finding the attacker, or whatever you would call it?
Violet had an idea that whatever it was I drew didn't stay manifested for long. No, all of the deaths were pretty much unsolved. They never found who or what had killed those people. Maybe it just does its thing and then it goes on its way once it's finished? My explanation sounded pretty good.
That sounds about right.
Violet's voice seemed a little unhappy, and when I looked down at her hands, the kitten wasn't in them. Where did it go? I asked, looking around her and all over the living room.
It just disappeared.
Violet smiled sadly as she sat back down at the kitchen table, and Adam pulled a seat out next to her. So I guess that's it then. I sat down and pulled another sheet of paper towards me.
Try something else. Maybe something that will make me a little less sad when it dematerializes.
Violet rolled my pencil across the table. Adam was watching me with scrutinizing eyes as I put pencil to paper again and began scribbling away, In a few minutes, I had drawn a full suit of armor and turned it around for everyone to see.
That's surprisingly good.
Adam's compliment was backhanded, but I took it anyway.
Okay, now focus on it, all right? Focus on the armor and will it to manifest.
Violet's eyes were full of anticipation as she waited for me to make the magic happen. I studied the drawing, really took in all the lines and shading, imagined how heavy the metal would feel if I was wearing it, the weight of the helmet over my head, and the echo of my voice if I were to speak inside of it. I hadn't realized I had been holding my eyes closed until Violet said something.
Look at you.
I opened my eyes to tiny slivers of light and pushed the visor back from my face. I was wearing the full suit of armor and felt very heavy in my chair.
Focus. Sometimes it's about focus and will. You wanted to wear the armor apparently, and here you are, all ready to go out and slay dragons.
Violet quickly clamped her hand over her mouth. She assumed it had been a poor choice of words, but she wasn't wrong about how I looked. I got up from my seat and made such a ruckus that Kane and Salome sat up from their prostrate position on the sofa to look as I ambled to the mirror in the hall. Holy... wow. Wow. I studied myself in the mirror, sporting the armor of a knight, before walking back out into the kitchen.
Look at that. Now you can control it for the most part. You just have to keep working on it. Try something live again and work on controlling what it does. That seems to be part of the problem you were having.
Violet had gone to the fridge and pulled out a whole handful of beers. Does this mean we're going to be working on this all night? Not really how I planned on spending my evening, but nothing was really going the way I had intended lately.
If you're up to it, the more we work on it, the better you will get at it. Last time we had to do this, we were fighting a demon. 2 demons in the process. Better to be prepared while things are quiet, just in case.
Violet looked a little sheepish that she was ordering me around, but she had a good point. The armor had dissipated from my body as I sat back down at the table and spoke. We're going to need more paper then.
Subject number 001, Violet Eve.
I have drawn over 30 sketches since we've been sitting here, and I think I have gotten pretty good at it in such a short amount of time. What good is all of this going to do me if I have to battle for my life? I can't just carry around a sketch pad or wear a chalkboard around my neck if I have to fight.
Seven yawned and stretched in his seat before resting his head on the table. I don't know. Maybe you can draw it in the air or something, but that would take manifestation to a whole new level. I didn't really have an answer for him. It was definitely a new and novel power, but I wasn't sure how it worked any more than he did.
Who knows? Let's just hope nothing comes a-knocking before I really get the hang of this.
Seven sighed and rubbed at his hazel eyes. Hopefully not when you are alone. We can protect you otherwise. I smiled at him and placed my hand over his. He had been doing really well, and his manifestations only took him a few seconds after 5 hours of work. It was well after 2 a.m., and he and I were the only 2 still awake. I'm sure he was ready to go to bed.
Nothing has come after me anyway.
Seven turned his head to the side on the table. I could tell that he was thinking about all the people that his new abilities had hurt, not who was going to hurt him. Not yet. Sometimes it takes a while. Naomi didn't have any issues until several weeks after our birthdays, and then the Batibot incident happened. Eventually, something would come for him. It only made sense considering.
The Batibot. I remember you mentioning that earlier. I never heard about any of that back in Salem. You said they were going to burn her home down?
Seven seemed more alert now. Yes. During the pub crawl weekend, there was this pub that had just opened called the Witch's Brew, and they were planning on having a burning pyre as a way to kick off their grand opening. It was the trunk of the Batibot's home, an old acacia tree, but it had all been a setup. I didn't want to go into too much detail. Salem was still fresh on my mind, and I had been thinking about what I had found. What I had seen the night that Gabby had incinerated Ammon, and a lot of us were worried about whether or not we would be arrested for disturbing the peace. Or worse.
A setup by whom?
Seven was suddenly curious and scooted his chair closer to mine. I need a cigarette. I stood up immediately. I figured we could trust him, but I wasn't so sure I wanted to discuss all of this with someone we still hardly knew. I think Adam may have smoked enough for the both of you, but let me escort you. You never know what could be lurking out there in the woods. Seven got up after me and walked us both to the door. So, who orchestrated the Batibot debacle? Seven had bummed a cigarette from me, and we both strolled quietly down the pasture fence. Can I trust you? I had to ask before I went on. I wasn't sure if his word would be enough. I felt like I could without it, but it would just confirm it for me. Of course. Who am I going to run and tell? A demon or something? Seven laughed at me, but I shot him a look that quickly made him close his mouth. It was a demon. A demon named Amun. He was trying to harvest souls and use the Batibot as a way to do so. By cutting down her home, he was able to use her as a means to try and kill hundreds of people by lacing their drinks with phenobarbital, all while they were wearing pendants made from her tree. The Batibot kills anyone who sleeps near her post. I informed him as I paused to look at the horses grazing by the fence. A demon. 2 demons. In Salem. And you killed them both. Seven looked on at me in awe, or maybe it was disbelief. I didn't kill anyone, actually. None of us did. Gabby killed Amun, thus killing herself. I put my cigarette out in the dirt and reached out to pet a paint horse that was sticking its nose out over the fence. How is that possible? Seven was almost right up against me as he went to pet the muzzle of the same horse. She burned him on the stake, on her post. Gabby destroyed her home and in turn herself too. I glanced at Seven. He was already looking at me, studying my face. That seems really intense, he muttered, staring straight into my eyes. It was beyond intense. Everything we do is intense. It's pretty much been nonstop since we turned 30. I took a deep breath as Seven's hand crossed over mine to pet the horse's velvety ears. I noticed that some of you changed physically when all of this happened. Cain has some interesting teeth, and Adam's hands, well, they're on fire. Seven made a statement that I knew was coming sooner or later. Some of us visibly changed. Others, like yourself and Naomi, not so much. I hoped he'd get the hint. You look fairly normal. He shot back. Even with the tattooed third eye. Is that like a symbol for your group or something? Seven ran his finger over the tattoo on my forehead, and I tried really hard not to blink while I attempted to keep it closed. No, that's my eye. I removed his hand from my face and finally blinked. Whoa. Seven breathed as I stood before him with pale purple skin, snowy white hair, and the most unnerving violet eyes smack dab in the middle of my forehead. I told you, it's my eye. I blinked again and turned away from him, still alien in appearance. Hey, don't be embarrassed. The tattoo was cool, but I like this look even better. Seven ran a finger down the side of my face to get me to look at him. It's still taking some time getting used to. I altered our appearances as best I could so we could actually go out in public. I gently brushed his hand from my face, but he held it firmly. What did you used to look like before all of this? Seven's voice was soft as he spoke to me. He didn't seem to care that I was a 3-eyed freak of nature. I'm Irish. What do you think? I laughed. I was still a bit nervous exposing myself to him like this. Let's see. Long curly red hair, porcelain skin, emerald green eyes, maybe some freckles here and there. He smiled coyly as he described me to a T. You're good. Classic description of your stereotypical Irish girl. I laughed, but he wasn't wrong. Is that not how you looked? If it isn't, you should show me. If you can alter your appearance and give yourself purple hair and a forehead tattoo, you should be able to make yourself look like the old you. Seven urged me to face him as he spoke. I hadn't really thought about doing that. I just wanted to make myself look different and forget about the old me. I don't know if I can. I shook my head, tongue-in-cheek, as I tried to pull away from Seven. I wasn't trying to think about the old me right now. I wasn't the same person anymore. But he wasn't going to take no for an answer. Seven leaned into me, his face so close I could feel the heat radiating from his skin.
Try. Just focus.
He whispered in my ear as his lips grazed the skin of my cheek. If I hadn't been purple at the moment, he would have seen me flush red. I was at a loss for words. I couldn't keep telling him no when I had been pushing him to focus on his own powers just hours earlier. Seven still hadn't moved from my personal space, and oddly enough, I wasn't complaining. I focused on my old look, my original self, and closed my eyes. I could feel the purple hue melting from my skin, the white of my hair filling up with its gingery color as it curled around my face and down my back. The third eye slowly faded into pale skin as I opened my green eyes to stare right into the face of Seven. Even though my third eye wasn't visible, I could still see everything.
I was right. You're beautiful.
Seven's face looked almost sultry in the dim light of the moon. I know I looked much better this way. I keep trying to accept that this isn't who I am anymore, but I miss it. I went to turn my face away from him again when he caught it in his hands.
That isn't what I meant. You're beautiful no matter what persona you're using. It isn't just the way you look, it's the way you are. Going out of your way to help a total stranger out of the goodness of your heart. Working with me all night to make sure I know how to use my powers. Not judging me for what my art has done to people.
His voice was low as he spoke, but gentle in its tone. It isn't your fault. Not like we had time to prepare ourselves for this. I just want to help others like me and try to find a way to... I began, but I couldn't quite find the words.
Fix this? I don't think we can fix this, Violet. I think we just have to make the best of it and try to make the right choices. I guess we were made this way for a reason, and we have to decide what that reason is.
Seven looped his finger through a curl hanging over my face and pulled it back as he appealed to my soul. I guess you're right. I felt myself melt back into my purple-haired, tattooed self.
You'll get there.
Seven looked shy all of a sudden as he stepped back from me and cleared his throat. We'll get there. I took his hand in mine and tried to assure him that I wasn't going to let him go out this alone.
You really are a beautiful soul.
He chuckled and came in close to hug me. I hadn't expected that, but the gesture felt too right. I hadn't been held like that in, well, never. It seemed like more than just a friendly hug, just a bit more intimate than that. I let go. For some reason, I let go of all the pent-up emotion and feeling that had been sitting stagnant inside me for weeks. My arms looped through his, and I buried my face in his shoulder and just held on tight. The tears flowed freely, and I just wept.
It's okay to be scared. I am scared, too, but we have each other in this. We'll find more like us, and we will figure out who made us this way and why. If we have to fight, then we fight.
Seven's voice was soft as he whispered into my hair. I don't want to be scared anymore. I let myself go limp in his arms as he supported my full weight.
Then don't be. I can try to be strong for the both of us,
he responded. And then it happened. I wasn't expecting it at all. Seven had turned my face towards his and slowly leaned down to meet my lips. The kiss was sweet at first, but quickly became hungry as he tangled his fingers in my hair and pressed his body into mine. It was rather forward of him, but I didn't seem to mind at all in the moment. I kissed him back, but gently pulled away to slow down the heat that was beginning to build between us.
Violet?
I heard Adam's voice call from the doorway to the farmhouse, and the kiss immediately ended.
Violet,
what are you doing out here? It's late and it may not be safe for...
Adam had come outside and his words were cut short when he noticed that I wasn't alone. I'm fine. Seven and I just came out for a drag. I tried to make myself look less disheveled as Adam eyed me curiously.
It's late. Almost 4 a.m. Have you even been to sleep yet?
He was glaring at Seven, and I wouldn't have noticed had that third eye of mine not been so keen. No, we've been working on Seven's abilities for hours and decided we needed a break. For some reason, I felt guilty for not having blurted out about the kiss between me and Seven.
You should get some rest. We all need to. Plus, it isn't safe to be out here like this. Things could be watching.
Adam took me by the elbow and pulled me away from Seven towards the house.
I wouldn't let anything happen to her, Adam. She's helped me too much, and I intend on returning the favor for as long as she will let me.
I glanced back to see Seven now eyeing Adam cautiously.
That's very kind of you, but it isn't safe for any of us to be out this late in so few numbers. I feel like it's been rather quiet since we met you, and that unnerves me. Whenever we find another one of us, something from heaven or hell is usually soon to follow.
Adam held me tight to his side as we continued our walk back to the farmhouse.
Good point. We'll reconsider smoking alone next time.
Seven seemed almost bitter as he followed us back.
Smart idea.
Adam spoke under his breath as the three of us entered the house to get some rest.
July 16th, 2016. Subject name, Adam Bodine. I sat myself down in the recliner I had been occupying for the past several hours and watched as Violet got herself some water from the tap, while Seven cleaned up his art corner on the kitchen table. Since it seems that everyone has already settled in besides us, you can take the back bedroom down the hall. Seven spoke in a hushed tone to Violet as he stacked his papers on the table before laying them down neatly on the counter.
No, I can take the...
Violet looked around for a vacant spot to crash, but there wasn't one. The back bedroom? Seven smirked, gently squeezing her shoulder as he passed by.
The back bedroom.
Violet giggled to herself as she finished her glass of water. Night, Violet. Get some rest. You too, Adam. Seven pointed at me before taking the steps 2 at a time to the second floor. Violet had this strange, dreamy look on her face as she took her glass to the sink and set it inside quietly. Looks like you've gotten Seven to come out of his shell a bit. How long were you two working on things? I spoke as softly as I could so that she could still hear me and I didn't wake the others.
Literally hours. I don't think we ever stopped. We needed to take a break because it was getting late.
Violet averted her eyes from me as she went to her bag and rifled through it for a more comfortable shirt to wear. He seems rather fond of you. He was telling me earlier that you hadn't mentioned to him that we weren't an actual couple. I should have been letting her go to bed, but I wanted to hear why.
I guess it just slipped my mind, but you must have told him that I was single.
She smirked slightly. I did, I admitted. There was a weird inflection in her voice when she spoke.
Well, I'm off to bed. Don't let me sleep too late, okay? We still have a lot more work to do in the morning.
Violet threw her shirt over her shoulder and began to march off when I practically leapt from my chair to stop her. Violet, I threw my hand out as she turned shoulder to face me. Please be careful. I had more to say, but I was trying to figure out how to pose it lest I royally piss her off.
I know. I shouldn't have gone wandering out in the open all alone, but I did have Seven with me.
She was truly apologetic, but that wasn't what I meant. Seven is who I want you to be careful of. And that wasn't the right way to say what I was trying to say, at all. Violet furrowed her brow and took a few steps closer to me.
What about Seven should I be careful of?
She was clearly not happy with me. I don't know, it's just... We don't know him, Violet. We hardly know anything about him. I tried to keep my voice low, but I was having a hard time.
He's good people, Adam. He's just scared and needs someone to guide him and help him get control of his powers.
She defended him, just like I knew she would. We don't even know his real name. My voice got just a little bit louder, but I closed the distance between us so I didn't wake anyone.
But we will. We need to give him a chance. What if we hadn't given Cain or Salome a chance? Or Naomi? It would still just be the two of us in this nightmare with minimal knowledge about who we are. Those people gave us the opportunity to discover ourselves and make friends and allies in the process. Violet's teeth were grit in anger, but I could see the tears pooling in the corners of her eyes. But what about Missy? I really needed to think about what I said before I said it. I was going to probably wake the whole house now.
How dare Miss... She didn't have me with her, Adam. She didn't have someone that was truly on her side. Things would have been different otherwise.
Violet was clearly biting her tongue. You don't know that. I bit my own. Violet, you said so yourself. Missy wasn't the same person that you grew up with. She was different. Or maybe she had always been that way and you just didn't see it, but you can't save everyone. And you can't always convince people to make the right choices either. I'm sure Seven is a great guy, but I just have this weird feeling. That last sentence was what I had been trying to say from the beginning, but it had exploded into this.
Well, I don't. I think he's like the rest of us, except people like him and Naomi didn't have anyone to help them through this. They were alone and scared, with no idea what had happened to their bodies, to their lives. We can't discredit him based on a weird feeling, Adam. Everything is a fucking weird feeling at this point.
Violet's voice was scarily calm as she spoke. I'm trying to protect you. I didn't know what else to say to her. She may have been right, but something was just off about him now.
I don't need you to protect me, Adam. Not from one of our own.
Violet didn't even give me a chance to rebut before she turned and walked down the hall before disappearing into the room. The sun was already blazing through the window when I finally woke up. Salome and Kane were sitting at the table eating, and Seven was at the stove, putting the last few sausage links onto a plate. "Morning, sunshine." Seven greeted me as he set the plate on the table between him and Kane. "Morning. Where's Violet?" I didn't know if she would be awake or not. "Still sleeping. I was just going to knock on her door and make her come eat some breakfast." Seven cleaned his hands off on a dish towel before making me a plate and setting it at a vacant seat. I was going to insist that I do it, but Seven had already gone down the hall and was knocking on her door, but there was no reply. He must have waited a moment and then knocked again, but still got no response. "Violet, wake up and come get some breakfast. It's getting late and you wanted to work more on my art," he called through the door. I heard it open, and then a hushed exchange of words before the two came back down the hallway. Violet looked like she hadn't slept well. Her hair was a mess as she pulled it back from her face and straightened her shirt when she sat down. "Sleep well?" I asked her quietly, and she just eyed me without a word.
"How late were you up, Vi? You look awful."
Salome patted her on the back while she picked at a stack of pancakes.
"Late. Too late."
Violet lifted her green eyes to me before turning them back to her food. "What's the plan for today?" Kane asked as he sopped up syrup with his last pancake. "I need to try and get a hold of Sam. He's supposed to come back today, but I haven't gotten a chance to tell him about what happened yesterday." Seven popped a sausage link in his mouth and cast Violet a weary look. "About that, shouldn't you go back to the house and figure out when you'll be able to get back in?" I asked. Seven hadn't really gone into details about all of that yesterday, and I was curious. "The cops told me that they would contact me when I could go back in the house. They said they didn't suspect foul play. It looked as if he just spontaneously combusted." Seven pursed his lips and took a deep breath. "I still don't understand why your powers were working of their own volition. You seemed to get the hang of them fairly easily yesterday, but they were doing their own thing before. That statement was probably going to start a shitstorm, but we needed an answer. Josiah worried about how volatile Violet was, but her powers had never killed anything unless she wanted them to." "I don't know. Violet said that it took Naomi several weeks before she was able to control her dreams, and before that they were doing their own thing. I guess it's just harder for some to get a grasp on our gifts." Seven seemed genuine as he spoke to me, and he had a point, but that didn't put me at ease. What was to stop his drawing from coming to life and tearing Violet apart without the ability to control them completely?
"We can work on it some more today. I almost killed several people the first time my powers manifested, and I am still trying to permanently get a hold on them." Violet's eyes flickered to mine before settling on Seven.
We need to call Josiah and check in. I'll handle that while you work on more important things. I had barely even touched my food, but carried my plate over to the sink before sliding my phone from my pocket. I exited the house before anyone asked why I wasn't hungry anymore. Josiah? The other end picked up. Adam, is everything all right? Josiah sounded bored, and I imagined him with his feet propped up on the dining room table as he picked at his gold tooth after breakfast. Yeah, fine. Violet has been working with Seven on his powers, and he seems to be pretty good at controlling them for only a few hours' work. I paced the front drive as I smoked a cigarette. What exactly is his power? Just tattoos that come to life unexpectedly? Josiah seemed just as skeptical as I was becoming. It's his art. He can sketch things out and manifest them physically. His art seems to have a mind of its own. We suspect that it was just because he didn't know what he was dealing with and was somehow inadvertently giving things power. I explained as I sat on the bumper of the crossover. But you don't believe that. Josiah's sentence caught me off guard. Up until he said that, I wasn't sure what I believed. I just knew that something felt off. I don't know. I mean, Naomi's dreams kept her trapped for almost 2 weeks before she figured out how to get out of them. It could be the same with Seven. He just wasn't aware of what he was doing, and the tattoos did their own thing without him. I used a version of Seven's explanation. Have you looked into these deaths yet? Josiah asked another question that I hadn't thought of. No. We ended up having to meet Seven at a park because his roommate spontaneously combusted in his house. Then we came to his former employer's house because it was the only place we had to go. We've been here ever since. I got up and wandered off towards the barn as I talked on the phone. I know Violet has her laptop. Look into these deaths and see what you can find. I'm not saying that Seven is the bad guy in this, but you can't ever be too careful. After what happened with Violet's friend Missy, we have to be prepared that not all of your kind is aligned with the right side. Josiah's words seemed to lift a weight off my shoulders. He was just as suspicious as I was. Will do. I'll call you if I find anything. I flicked my cigarette into a bucket that was collecting water from the rain spout. You do that. And Adam, please be careful. We are working on some magics over this way, trying to divine answers to all of this. The cards don't look good. Josiah's goodbye was a bit unnerving. Always. I'll call you a little later. And I hung up. It didn't necessarily make me feel better, but I was glad that someone was just as put off by Seven as I was. Subject name, Seven. I got a hold of Sam. He's on his way back from the shop in Shreveport. He said he'd be back by dinner. I had finished my phone call and came out to find Violet all alone in the living room.
That's good. He knows that we're here?
She had her phone in her hand and was scrolling through something. Yeah, he said it was fine. I told him about yesterday too, and he said he would swing by the house and see how everything was looking. I sat down on the edge of the sofa and leaned in to see what Violet was doing on her phone. She was reading a blog page and quickly exited out before I could see what it was about. Where is everyone? I asked, remembering that it was just the two of us alone in the living room.
Adam took the car into town to get some things that we need, and the lovebirds went for a walk to see the horses. You want to get back to work, or did I wear you out yesterday?
There was a slight grin on her face as she tilted her head up to look at me. You hardly wore me out. I licked at my lips. I'm ready to charge forward on this.
Okay, let's do a few more safe manifestations and then try to find a way to work on your combat. If something strikes, the likelihood that we will be expecting it will be slim. You'll have to be able to act quickly.
Violet jumped off the couch and took me by the hand. What about hand-to-hand combat without powers? I knew that our abilities weren't our only weapons.
I assume you can fight given your build. Sometimes we have to mix our talents with regular fighting skills. Mine were less than subpar before all of this, but it's as if instinct took over, and let's just say I have tossed men twice my size and put a dent bigger than you in an old Chevy. We are abnormally strong and resilient, and we can use that to our advantage until our powers become second nature. Violet had retrieved my pencil and pad and laid it out on the table. I've been known to throw a punch or two in my more youthful days. Let's get to work on my art, though.
I need to get a better grip on that. I took a seat and began scribbling away on the page. After a few minutes, I turned the paper around for Violet to see. She put her hand to her mouth while the other grasped the bouquet of wild violets that were lying on the table.
7.
Her voice was quiet as she lifted them to her nose and inhaled the sweet fragrance. I know they won't last forever, but flowers never do after you pick them. Sometimes they are better left to grow wild, but I think maybe I can keep these alive long enough for you to enjoy them. I smiled at her. I kept finding myself doing that when I was around her.
They're beautiful. One of my favorite flowers.
Violet set the bouquet down on the table and sat in her chair. So, I have been sitting here since yesterday showing you all the crazy things that I can do, but I have barely begun to see what it is that you do. I plucked a flower from the bouquet and slid it behind one of Violet's ears.
It isn't too different from what you do, I guess. I haven't even really told you what my power is.
Violet looked like she felt a little embarrassed for pushing me so hard without sharing what her powers were really like. Then tell me, what magic was bestowed upon you? I turned up a corner of my mouth as I watched Violet's pale skin flush purple.
I can alter reality, I guess. At least that's what Adam's brother thinks I'm doing. I can pretty much make anything I want to happen. Not to sound arrogant or anything. I can manipulate the energy and maybe the worlds around me to suit what I need.
Violet waved her hand over the table, and it was instantly stacked with violet flowers similar to the ones that I had drawn. How do you do that? I was amazed at the hundreds of fragrant buds that littered the tabletop.
How do you do this?
Violet grabbed the bouquet I made and separated it from the other flowers. I guess you really don't know any more than I do. I huffed.
I don't. It's just part of us. It's always been part of us. We just couldn't access it.
Violet took a heavy breath, and the violet flowers disappeared from the table. With a power like that, you could pretty much do whatever you want. I was beyond amazed with Violet. She was smart, beautiful, and had a power that could bring anyone to their knees.
That's true, I guess, but I try not to take advantage of it. I may use it to alter my appearance, but I have never used it for purely personal gain.
Violet drew in on herself as she spoke. You're smart, you know that. Are you the one running this show? I fiddled with my pencil as I spoke.
Hardly. Josiah would be the one calling the shots.
For our own good. Violet seemed a bit bitter as she spoke his name. Ah, the man that Adam had to call and check in with? Is he anything like us? I leaned in over the table as I spoke.
No, Josiah is purely human and a bit of an arrogant arse at that. But he has a good heart, I think, and just wants to keep everything in order.
Violet nodded as she adjusted the flower behind her ear. Well, he should let you call the shots instead. You really seem to know how to handle everyone. Kane was telling me about you in Salem and in Las Vegas when you met him and Salome. He said you were a real force to be reckoned with, and if it hadn't been for you, a lot of people would have died. I tried to make her see how strong she really was.
Maybe, but we all have our talents and strong points. I may seem like I have it together, but I am a mess most of the time.
Violet seemed like she was her own worst critic. I think you have it together more than you realize. Show me what you got. Let's go practice our battle techniques. I got up from my seat and took Violet by the hand to lead her out of the house.
You didn't bring any paper,
Violet pointed out to me as we walked through the front drive. I can just draw on the dirt. Remember what I said, it's not like I can just tote a sketch pad around with me. I grabbed a long stick over near the fence and brought it back to Violet.
Now that I'm thinking about it, how are we going to practice your magical combat skills with no opponent?
Violet stood a few feet away from me as I dragged the stick around in the dirt. We're going to fight each other. You can control your powers better than I can, so I figured it'd be easy for you to defend yourself. I kept on doodling in the drive.
What? You're going to attack me?
Violet scoffed, stepping back a few paces. I think I have the hang of this enough to not hurt you. Especially you. Don't worry your gorgeous head about it. I leaned in to kiss her cheek, but my lips grazed hers instead. I felt a breathy sigh as I let them linger just a bit on the corner of her mouth before stepping back to finish my drawing. You go first. I pointed the stick at her. Violet's eyes darted around as she thought about what her first move would be. I made sure that my drawing sat unfinished until she was ready to start. She let out a primal scream as I looked up and saw her flying at me with her fists ready. I dodged the blow and spun around, finishing the last line of my drawing as the ground between my feet turned to glass. I tried not to slip as I cracked the heel of my boot down in the glossy earth, shattering it before picking up a shield and sword from the dirt below. The sword was merely made of wood, as I didn't want to actually hurt Violet, but before I could swing it at her, it had disappeared from my hand. Crack! Violet swung the wooden sword at me and smacked it up against my shield. Nice! I laughed as I drew another sword with the toe of my shoe and kicked it up to me as she swung down again. Not fair! I don't have a shield! Violet parried my blow with her wooden sword and ducked as I swung mine over her head. Make one! I came charging forward, but by the time I got to her, she had produced a huge round shield to block me. The cracking of wood against wood echoed across the farm as we battled back and forth. Soon the swords had been tossed aside as Violet struck her hand out for a blow to my rib cage, but I grabbed her by the wrist and spun her around with an arm across her shoulders. You used to fight when you were younger, my arse. You seem like you practice every day. Violet's chest heaved up and down as I held her tight against my body. Okay, so I sort of lied. It can get a bit rowdy working in a tattoo shop on Friday nights. I've had to bounce a few people here and there. I spun her quickly to face me and gripped her firmly by the wrists. Are we done sparring now? Violet's green eyes were glimmering in the mid-afternoon sun as she looked up at me. I figured I would pause to partake in the spoils of war. I grinned slightly before lifting her up by the waist with one arm and passionately planting a kiss upon her lips. I hadn't had enough from the night before, and all that fighting had gotten me a little riled up. She had seemed timid the first time, but her hands quickly found my face this time as our lips explored one another's. Oh, excuse us. Salome's voice interrupted our exchange, and I begrudgingly set Violet down as she and Kane strolled up from the far side of the pasture. No need to excuse yourself. We were just, sparring. It wasn't a lie, but it was a terrible defense. That's how you spar? I guess I've been doing it all wrong. Kane joked, but I could tell he seemed a little bit uncomfortable. I guess we just got caught up in the heat of battle. I stepped away from Violet and rubbed the back of my head. Yeah, well, besides what we saw, how did it go? Salome queried. He did really well. Pretty much bested me. Violet nodded, biting at her lower lip. Seemed that way. Salome chuckled as she threw her arm around Kane's waist and continued walking to the house. Better not let him best you a second time, Vi, or you may end up on your back. Violet let out a weird noise that sounded like a half-laugh, half-choking sound. Maybe we should go in and get some lunch and wait for Adam to get back. At the rate he's going, he and Sam should get here about the same time. I nudged Violet with my elbow and she leaned into me, trailing her lips slightly over my arm. Careful now. You keep showing me affections like that, and I just may have to lay you out flat on your back like Salome said. I kissed her gently before tugging her along behind me into the house. Subject number 001, Violet Eve. I was visibly flustered as I squished myself between Kane and Salome on the couch and tuned into an old rerun on the television. Seven decided that he needed a shower and rushed off to the bathroom not long after we stepped into the house, leaving me a little confused as I settled in. So? Salome began as I laid my head on her shoulder. It was nothing. I knew what her word was referring to. Nothing? That kiss was straight off the cover of a Harlequin romance novel. Steamy as fuck. How did that happen? She smirked, playing with my purple hair as she spoke.
Kane was quiet, but I could see him eyeballing me as I talked with Salome. It wasn't the first time. I felt slightly giddy as I spoke and buried my face in her long locks. Wait, it wasn't? What am I missing? Salome shrugged my face from her shoulder as she turned to speak to me. He kissed me last night. I bit my lower lip, thinking about how romantically passionate that exchange had been. Tell me everything. Was it good? Messy? I assume there was tongue. She rambled as I felt Kane shift uncomfortably next to me. Good? Yes. Messy? No. No tongue either. It was actually very sweet, albeit a bit strong. It just sort of happened. I showed him what I really looked like and then showed him what I used to look like, and he told me I was beautiful no matter what I appeared to be on the outside. I could feel myself flushing with color as I spoke. Isn't he charming? Salome giggled, and I bit at my thumbnail as I thought about his lips pressed against mine. You should be careful, Vi. He seems to be a really nice guy, but don't go jumping into bed with him so quickly. Kane interrupted bluntly. Who says I'm going to sleep with him? It was just a kiss. Or two. I was rather taken aback that he would assume that of me. That isn't what I meant. I just think that you need to be wary of everyone until you get to know them better. We don't know his true nature. Kane corrected himself. Not you two. I wasn't wary of you or Salome for that matter. Concerned, yes, but never wary. I shot back. You dreamed about us. A premonition signaling to you that good people needed help. Cassandra could speak for Naomi's character, but Seven is still practically a stranger. Kane rebutted, but I didn't want to have this conversation. I'm going to tell you the same thing I told Adam. We can't go into this treating others like us as if they were an enemy first and then make friends later. I like to think that people are inherently good, and Seven hasn't given me a reason to think otherwise. Adam has been a bit of a dick the last few weeks, and I don't know what has his trousers in a twist, but I'm not going to let his opinion or yours keep me from seeing the good in others like us. Maybe I was being a bit too optimistic, but I wasn't going to let the bug in Adam's arse keep me from building a relationship with anyone. We're just looking out for you, Vi. Not trying to really say anything about Seven's character, just trying to protect you. Kane tousled my hair with a meaty hand. For fuck's sake, why does everyone assume that I need protecting? I've come this far on my own merit and wits, and I think I can handle myself. I pushed off the sofa, casting Salome a wistful glance as I tried to calmly march myself to the room that Seven had put me in. Violet? I heard Seven calling to me from behind the closed door. I had hoped to possibly get some sort of research done while I was pouting in my room, but Adam had left with the crossover and my laptop bag when he went into the city. Come in, I called, rolling onto my back to stare at the ceiling. I was just cycling through things that people had said to me in the past couple days, and I just wanted my brain to stop. Sam is here if you want to meet him. Seven cracked the door open and spoke through. Still no Adam? I swung my legs over the bedside and stuffed my feet into my sneakers. Not yet. I don't think he's called either. Seven opened the door a little wider to see me trying to fix my laces. Great, I muttered, glancing between my knees to see that Seven seemed like he was enjoying the view. Men. He's a grown man from New Orleans. I'm sure he can handle Baton Rouge just fine. Seven smirked and led me out into the living room. Salome and Kane were sitting on the couch having a quiet conversation with a man that was wearing a leather vest with a winged reaper stitched onto the back. He had a thick, honey blonde beard and a long braided ponytail the same color that fell just past his shoulders. Sam, this is Violet. Seven nudged me forward as the lithely built man stood to greet me. It's nice to meet you, Violet. I'm glad someone is keeping an eye on Seven. He's been having a hard time lately. Sam heartily shook my hand, and I made sure to grip his just as firmly. Seven is a good man. He just needs a little direction to get him back on track, I responded. I didn't want to go into too much detail because I wasn't sure what Seven had told him.
That he is. He has a lot of potential. I've always seen that in him.
Sam winked at Seven and went back to sit in the chair that Adam had been occupying since we arrived.
Seven said there were 4 of you? Where's the other guy at?
Sam mused aloud as he took a gulp of whiskey from a flask. He's in town somewhere. Not sure what is taking him so long, though. I rested on the arm of the couch as I spoke.
What did he go into Baton Rouge for again?
Seven posed a question that even I didn't have the answer to.
Said he was going to get some food for our stay and get some fresh air.
Kane answered, but to me that wasn't enough of a reason to be gone for this long.
He probably got lost, and it's kind of a long trip. He has a cell phone, I'm sure, so he'll be fine.
Sam waved it off and took another swig. I agreed silently and settled into Salome as Seven's eyes wandered over to me. I was trying not to seem as exuberant as I had been. Even though I saw nothing wrong with him, I didn't want to step on anyone's toes, though I still wasn't sure what the problem was.
Anything on Rick?
Sam just kept drinking as he talked casually with us.
I spoke to the police. They're ruling it accidental, though I don't know what that accident is. They said that I can go back in the house after crime scene cleanup does its rounds. I don't think I want to go back, though.
Seven looked really distraught as he rubbed his palms in the knees of his jeans.
You can stay here, you know that. I only put you with Rick because I assumed that you'd want to have some sort of independence. But you have a place here as long as you want.
Sam tilted his flask towards Seven.
Thanks, man. That means a lot.
Seven nodded and pulled out a chair from the kitchen table so we all had a place to sit.
Well, I'm going to get a shower in before your friend gets back with dinner. It's been a hot day and I'm sure I smell like the horse stalls.
Sam chuckled as he got up from the recliner.
I'll holler up to you if Adam gets here before you come back down.
Seven bumped fists with the man before he climbed the stairs to the second floor. I need to give Adam a call. Just want to make sure that he hasn't gotten lost. I excused myself, phone in hand, to find out why Adam had yet to return. His aloofness and cantankerous behavior was starting to worry me.
Subject name, Adam Baudin. Just coffee, please. I gave my order to the waitress at a small diner as I set up Violet's laptop on the table.
Okay. Let me know if you need anything else.
She smiled shyly, tucking a strand of auburn hair behind her ear before she retreated behind the counter. My plan was to get as far away from Violet as I could before getting down to the bottom of these so-called unexplained deaths. Kane knew what I was doing, but I left everyone else in the dark. I felt like I had to at least leave him behind to keep an eye on Violet while I worked out the details of the deaths, and this diner looked as good a place as any to sit down and have some alone time. Thankfully, Violet didn't have a password on her computer, and I easily connected to the hotspot in the diner before pulling up a search engine to get started.
Coffee and a piece of pie. On the house.
The waitress set down a steaming cup of black coffee and 3 creamers along with a warm piece of pumpkin pie, my favorite. Thanks. I smiled slightly as she backed away from the table and went to help other customers. I fixed my coffee and immediately began to search for news articles in Salem. Unexplained deaths in Salem, Massachusetts. I muttered under my breath as I sipped from my mug and scrolled through the search results. This looks promising. I clicked on a link with a headline that read, "Woman disemboweled in Salem apartment. Police on the hunt for wild animal." I clicked on the article and skimmed through it for something that would stand out. A local area woman was found deceased in her apartment Monday morning. Her landlord had come to collect the rent and found the body in the victim's bedroom. Elizabeth Marks, 56, was found with a severe wound to the stomach that looked as if she had been attacked by a wild animal. Salem PD suspects that it may have been a wolf, but none have been spotted in the area recently. How the animal was able to access her apartment on the 3rd story of Salem Park's apartment complex is still a mystery, considering the door to the apartment was locked and all windows were closed at the time that the body was discovered. Sergeant Harrelson is on the hunt for the animal attacker as well as another elusive creature that killed a man just 2 days before. There was a link to another article in the last sentence, and I clicked on it to reveal the headline. Man bitten by deadly snake. Officials now suspect bite came from cobra. This sounds like what Seven was talking about. I huffed, raising my hand to signal another cup of coffee from the waitress. Man found dead in dilapidated Salem home due to an apparent snake bite. Roger Wilkes, 58, was found by his brother on the living room couch with a snake bite to the neck. Poisonous snakes can be quite common in the area, but after toxicology returned, it was discovered that the venomous snake that inflicted the bite was a hemicatus, a species of cobra native to Africa. It is currently unknown whether or not the man illegally owns such a snake, but authorities are still investigating. Venomous snakes can be quite common in the area, but after toxicology returned, it was discovered that the venomous snake that inflicted the bite was a hemicatus, a species of cobra native to Africa. It is currently unknown whether or not the man illegally owns such a snake, but authorities are still investigating. I pulled out a pad of paper from Violet's laptop bag and scribbled down the 2 names and ages of the deceased people. I knew there were more from what Seven had stated, but I figured I would start with these 2 before investigating the rest. I did a quick search for the Essex County Clerk's office and dialed the number as the waitress brought me my second cup of coffee.
Tammy Willard, Essex County Clerk, how can I help you?
An older woman answered the phone. Yes, hi, my name is... I had to come up with a name quick. David Gilmore with the Salem Gazette. I'm doing an expose on the unexplained deaths here in Salem and was wondering if you could give me some information on a few of the deceased. I probably didn't sound official enough, but it was worth a shot.
Which cases? I'll do what I can to help. The police said that they were all freak occurrences, but something seems a little fishy to me. I think they're hiding something from us.
She whispered back. Great, a conspiracy theorist. Roger Wilkes and Elizabeth Marks. I had my pen ready to write everything down.
Let's see. Elizabeth Marks. She was a retired social worker, had been for 11 years before settling down in Cambridge to start a family. She eventually moved to Salem after a terrible divorce, but it doesn't look like she remarried from what I can see. She had been living alone for the past 15 years and seems to have no next of kin. Let me search a little deeper into her records because it looks like some things have been omitted in her file. And Roger Wilkes. He was a commercial fisherman for 25 years before retiring in Salem. He got into some trouble with the law, it looks like. Let me see. Oh, dear. Miss Willard clicked her tongue before she went on. It says here that he and his wife had been taking in foster children from the years 1993 to 1999. Over 10 children, all to collect money from the state. He and his wife were arrested in 2000 under suspect of abusing the system after the children under their care hadn't been to school in almost a month. Several minors were found in the home, malnourished and neglected, while Wilkes and his wife willingly accepted money from the government. The children were removed and sent to other foster homes, while Wilkes and his wife were arrested and charged with 4 counts of child neglect and endangerment. The file doesn't mention anything specific about the wife, but Wilkes spent 10 years in prison before being paroled. She seemed very upset by his records, and I could totally understand why. I was blessed to have been taken in by a wonderful woman, while others were not so fortunate. Anything more on Elizabeth Marks? I was trying to put this information together in my head to see if it made any sense, but at the moment, the deaths seemed random. Maybe Seven really had no idea what his powers were capable of. I will have to go down into the archives for the old records and see what I can dig up. If you give me your number, I can call you back if I find anything.
Miss Willard, you are a godsend. That'd be great. I gave her my number and made sure to take hers down before I ended the call.
You need anything else, sugar? 2 cups of coffee on an empty stomach won't do you any good. You've barely touched your pie.
The waitress was back again, smiling at me as she wiped her hands on her apron. I'm good. Just doing some work before going to get some takeout. I smiled back at her.
I'm sure the wife will like an evening off.
She laughed at me. I noticed her name tag. Lucy. I'm not married. Just friends back at the house. Hard to get work done when everyone is wanting to party. I was making small talk, but I really just wanted to finish my investigation.
Oh well, you make some lucky woman very happy one day.
Was she flirting with me? At this point, I wouldn't even notice a woman hitting on me even if she'd literally hit me. Thanks. I felt a little warm as I accepted the compliment.
Name's Lucy, by the way. If you need anything else, just holler for me.
She winked and sauntered back behind the counter. Will do, Lucy. I went back to researching for some time, trying to compile as much as I could about the victims, but no one really stood out like Elizabeth Marks and Roger Wilkes. I felt like they would lead me down the rabbit hole into some answers. I had a whole page full of notes when the phone rang. It was Violet. Yellow. I shouldered the phone as I continued to type quietly.
Where are you? You've been gone for hours and Sam is back already.
Violet sounded irritated when she spoke. Just getting some fresh air out in Baton Rouge and doing a little shopping. I should be home in a couple of hours. I didn't want to lie to her, but I knew that if I told her the truth, she wouldn't want me to come back.
Well, hurry it up. We are supposed to be doing this together, but you aren't even here to help.
Now she was snapping at me, and I felt my hands begin to heat up on the keyboard. You sure as hell don't look like you need my help, I quipped instead of apologizing. She had taken responsibility of Seven's training and didn't seem like she needed anyone's help in the matter. It was just a shitty vacation for the rest of us.
Just hurry back, yeah? I just want us all under one roof.
Violet sounded a bit defeated, and I instantly felt bad. I'll be back soon, Vi. Just tell the others I'm going to finish picking up dinner and then I'll come back to the house. I softened as I responded.
All right, see you soon.
And she hung up before I could say goodbye. It took me a little longer than expected to get back to the farmhouse, and when I got there I found the front door open, but the screen was locked. I didn't hear anyone inside, but I knocked on the door just to make sure. Anyone home? I tried to peer through the screen, but it didn't look like anyone was inside at all. I didn't see any cars in the driveway either. Everyone must have left. And I didn't have a key. Serves me right. I slumped down on the porch and crossed my arms over my legs. I really wanted to talk to Kane about what I found and see what my next move should be, but I also wanted to talk to Violet. Our phone conversation had been playing over and over again in my head since it ended, and I kept wondering what that hint of negative emotion was in her voice. I heard an engine rev over near the barn and it popped my thought bubble. It sounded like whoever was revving that motorcycle was going to tear out of those barn doors with a trail of fire streaking behind them. The roaring died down, and I tried to pinpoint if it was indeed in the barn, or if it was echoing from the next-door neighbors, except the only neighbors were about 1.5 miles down the road. Then the engine noise spiked again, and I heard someone let off the clutch. A shiny chrome and black chopper came flying from behind the barn, doing at least 50 as it blazed through the wide-open drive and started doing donuts in front of the pasture. I was in instant fight mode. My hands were ablaze, and I was on my feet quicker than the biker screeching at top speeds through the drive. The only thought racing through my mind was that someone had come while I was gone, and something terrible could have happened to the people I cared for. I started pitching balls of fire at the wide-shouldered man in the biker helmet as he swung the bike by me and flung dirt in my face. Even though I couldn't see, I lobbed one more fiery shot and it caught the bike in the back tire. The motorcycle spun out in circles and launched the man on the seat over the fence and into the horse pasture. I was so blind with rage that I almost didn't hear Kane practically barking at me as he charged out of the barn doors. Salome, Seven, and Violet were running behind him. "Hands down, man!" Kane rushed me, tackling me to the ground before I had a chance to blow the bike and the biker into 1,000 fiery pieces. The tackle sent me reeling as Kane gripped my scorching hot wrists and held my hands down. Since I wasn't exactly in my right mind, Kane's skin began to sizzle as he held me tight. "Sam, are you okay?" I heard Seven call out as he raced right past me and out to the field. "Dude, what the hell?" Kane grunted in my ear as he pulled me upright and finally let go of my wrists. I don't know. I thought he had done something to you guys. I slipped my gloves back on and brushed myself off. I didn't even remember taking them off. "No, that's Sam, Seven's friend." Kane pointed to the muscular man that was now climbing over the fence. I instantly felt myself go hot. Not because the fire was rising again, but because I had just assaulted a man who was so generously letting us stay in his house. I don't know if Seven has told him anything about his powers, or ours for that matter, but we are going to have to say something now. Kane straightened my jacket as he pushed me forward to where Violet was now looking Sam all over for any sign of injury. Can someone please explain to me what the hell just happened? Sam sounded furious as he placed a hand on Violet's shoulder to signal that he didn't need a nurse. You see... Seven was starting to fumble his way through an explanation when I stepped up to take the brunt of it. I'm really sorry about your bike. I looked down to see that the tire had blown, but the frame still looked to be in good condition. Did you fucking shoot at me? Sam's long reach had me by the collar before I could even explain myself. Everyone was yelling for him to stop, but he wasn't listening. He was about to bury a fist right in my face when Violet screamed. Enough! That one word had enough blowback to pull me clear across the lot, and Sam in the other direction, but she didn't let either of us get hurt. You may need to sit down, Sam. Seven was practically holding his breath as he held his arm out to keep his friend from charging at me like a bull. Sam was grunting as Seven led him past me, and Violet yanked me by the arm to pull me inside the house.
That's all for tonight's episode. If you'd like to support the archives, you can do so by visiting our Buy Me a Coffee at buymeacoffee.com/inkdrinkerarchives. If you're into witchy apothecary goodies, you can support us by purchasing some wares from our shop, inkdrinkerapothecary.storeenvy.com. From loose-leaf teas to delightful perfume oils and mystery goods like our blind date with the book boxes, there is pretty much something for every strange and unusual creature out there. You can also find the archives on most social media platforms at Ink Drinker Archives or the Occult Archives with author E.M. Moon on Facebook. As always, I'll leave you with this reminder. Lock your doors, salt your windows, and remember, it's okay to sleep with the lights on. I'm tacking this onto the end because I didn't want to have to make a completely new end credits, but we now have merchandise up on Threadless. We have 3 different shirts to choose from in all sorts of different sizes and actually different products, not just shirts. You can get like phone cases and stuff like that, but really I'm mainly excited about the shirts. So if you guys would like to buy an Occult Archives podcast shirt and rep your initiation into the cult of the Occult Archives library, that would be awesome.